All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. All right, today we're going to talk about 15 items to stockpile before the coming food shortage. Now, you're probably saying, well, Chuck, I don't even know if there is a coming food shortage. Well, there's always a coming food shortage, is what I would tell you. But no, what I'm talking about is inflation. And inflation is coming, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but gas prices have been going up a little bit. I believe OPEC said they're cutting oil production by 200 million barrels a day. I think that's the number. Either way, it's 2% of the world oil supply is being cut, and petroleum is used to make fertilizer. And also, I don't know if you guys know, but there is a war going on over in Ukraine. And this Ukraine, turns out, is a large food supplier. And it turns out it's not just, you're like, well, I eat meat, and that's not meat. But guess what meat eats? It eats grains and shit that come out of Ukraine. So
Right.
these are things, oil comes out of Ukraine. A lot of this going on, it's things we need to prepare for. So basically, let's talk about it. Did you see? So OPEC, they said, hey, we're cutting the oil production because Russia got together with them and they had a little talk. And our fearless leader, Biden, goes over and is like, hey, you guys, you know what would be great? If you could just wait 2 months, like maybe after November and then raise gas prices. But that's what he asked for. He didn't say don't raise oil prices and screw us. He
Right.
said, could you wait till after the election? Like he just said, wait 2 months. I interpreted that as
Right.
wait till after the election. But, whatever. Anyway, 15 items. Kevin, what is the most important thing that we need to stockpile if we are ready for basically food prices to go up? What would we be worried about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, I would start with things that I always see these like food storage lists and things like that. Shit you should store up and stuff you should hang on to. Get your canned vegetables and all that sort of stuff. But the main thing we need to focus on is what's going to last forever. You know what I mean? What are going to be the long-term food? So let's just run through a list of stuff that you can get and you can store it, and you don't have to worry about rotating your stock and all that sort of stuff. So dried beans and dried rice are right at the top of the list. Now, you can't just, buy them in the bag that they come in and expect that it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
Beans and rice can get insects in it and do damage to it even when it's stored. A lot of people like to use those Mylar bags, and those are great. Those are great because it doesn't get through there. Oxygen doesn't get in, and it really stores them long term, and it does a good job doing it. There's a lot of different ways you can store it, though. You can can rice, you can can beans, all that sort of stuff. You want to have those oxygen absorbers for anything like that you're going to store dried. That goes for anything that's freeze dried, like pastas and things like that too. The oxygen is what causes the damage to that stuff, oxygen and moisturizer. So you want to just keep on top of your game when you're packing your stuff. And if you do it right, you should be good for forever with that sort of stuff. Another couple items are Pop-Tart or popcorn. Sorry. Salt,
I like Pop-Tarts.
sugar, honey, vinegar, liquor. Whiskey is a great prep. Just heads up. Let's see. Instant coffee, soy sauce, maple syrup. A lot of this stuff is things that you can buy off the shelf and put it on your shelf and just keep it there and until you're ready to open it and use it. And I think nobody wants to be eating rice and bean honey for the rest of their lives, but it'll keep you alive and moving. And those are things that you can set and forget. You know what I mean? You pack that, store it, get it in a 5-gallon drum and set it up in the basement somewhere, and you're going to be good and ready to go whenever things get really nasty out there. Now, a lot of people do other things like Patriot Supply, MREs, and that sort of freeze dried food. Those are great, but you really want to pay attention to the price and the quality of those things. You're going to spend a lot of money for MREs, and if you get My Patriot Supply, you'll save some money, but it's not something you're really going to want to eat, And there's a balancing act there with when it comes to that sort of stuff. I mean, do you really want to starve to death, or do you really want to live, without starving to death, and all you've got to eat is rice? I'd fucking kill myself,
Yeah, but wait, what if it's rice and whiskey? If you're like, oh,
different story altogether, right?
Game changer, right?
Uh-huh.
No, but there's I like to think, like you said, that long-term food storage, Legacy, My Patriot Supply, a lot of these companies, Augustin Farms, they might be sponsoring this episode. I don't even know yet. Still waiting on some emails. So put a link in the bottom in the show notes. I'm just saying that could be helping out.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, these things, they're good for the stuff that you want to cache, the stuff that you want to bury and save or have in that hidden closet that set it and forget it. There's a lot of things like that where you can put it away and never have to look at it again. Then you have a whole stock that you need to rotate and go through. The big thing is what do we need now, right? So obviously, if you have and you're trying to focus on immediate and right now, and you're new to prepping, and this is like a basic, hey, I'm just getting started. This is overwhelming. I don't want to get scared and blow my $5,000 that I have, and I'm worried about inflation, and every penny I have would be caught up in survival food and stuff like that. Don't panic. We're not there yet. We don't need to panic. We do need to start taking action, though. And what I would say is, if you have money, we're going to go through and give you a nice list of things that you need to be buying. But if you don't, these are, Kevin just went through a big tear of items that you should be picking up extra. But how about when you go to the store, you buy an extra, you buy 2 items instead of 1. With certain things, you're like, hey, I'm getting kind of low on honey. Let me buy another honey to put on the shelf. Guess what? You're at Sam's Club, 25-pound bag of rice, Costco, wherever you go, wherever you buy bulk. Walmart, right? Everybody can go to Walmart and they have big bags of rice. 5-gallon bucket at Lowe's. You put the rice in there, pack it up, get as much air out because you load it up as much as you can. You seal that up. That's going to last 2, 3. I got to say, I've kept them as long as 5 years and not seen anything in it. I know Mayhem Country Living. Is that what it is? And I always get confused. But Mayhem Country Living did a video on freezing the stuff before you pack it up and killing the insects and things like that. That seemed to work out really well. And he had good results with that. You may want to check that out. And too much honey, you can make mead. That's an option, right?
It's never
but so the bottom line is, you buy a couple of extra items each time and you start putting away. The idea is to start somewhere, start doing, how when you start a savings account or whatever as a child and you're like, oh, I put $1 in there, I have $1. But after 5 weeks, you have $5 and you're like, oh, that's getting to be something, maybe as a grown up, maybe it's $50 a week and you have $250 after, a couple months or whatever. You know what I mean? I can do math, but a month of that quarter there, whatever. But it adds up. And that's the thing. You keep going and building. And that's what you need to do. You need to start. But you need to start practical. Things that are going to last a little bit, but things that are going to work. So in a perfect world, we do the long-term food storage. We get a decent, probably, I would say expensive food storage, long-term stuff that's going to last 25 years. I would want 6 months for my family. And
Hmm.
that's
Right.
a ridiculous amount of money. All right. That is.
That's a
I
lot of food.
understand that.
Right.
It's a lot of food. It's a lot of money. So I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't run out and do that in a day. That's something you plan and save up for. That's an
Right.
ideal situation. That stuff I would have hidden somewhere, whether it's cached and buried, whether it's in some kind of secret hiding place, but I would have that. Then I would move into my rotatable stuff. And these are your things like rice, and your honey and that kind of thing. These are things that are going to last a bit longer, but you still need to be checking on it and rotating through it. I actually buy 25-pound bags of rice, and I actually use 25-pound bags of rice. I know that
Hmm.
sounds insane, but it's true. Um, my family, the way we cook, we do things, we set it aside. Now, mind you, I'm not eating a lot of the rice, but people in my house are. And so that works out great. There's other things that are great belly fillers that will last a good 2 years. I know at Sam's Club, I buy like the big bulk um, pancake mix, right? That stuff, you can fill a lot of bellies and a lot of calories. The one that I get there doesn't require eggs. However, I have chickens. I can add eggs to that and even thicken it up and up the protein, but it makes it so that my kids aren't eating eggs every morning, right? They might have
Right.
something different. Or basically I can have pancakes for lunch or for dinner and eggs for breakfast or vice versa. You have options. Um,
Right.
but you have something, you
Yeah.
look like you're chomping there.
Well, I heard somebody was talking about coffee. Christopher was talking about coffee. Um,
Right.
Coffee is one of those tricky things. Not really great for long term storage. Yes, you can get coffee and stick it in your freezer, and it'll last forever. But hypothetically, you might not have freezer space, and you might not have a working freezer that's gonna be running all the time for the next 15, 20 years. So one of the terrible options is instant coffee. You can get instant coffee and it lasts forever. Keep it sealed up and
It
it'll
does.
last, 15 years. You can open that thing up and it'll still be
Right.
shitty instant coffee, but it'll be coffee. And it's
It'll be
better
coffee.
than drinking tea, like those terrible people on the other side of the ocean. But it is something you can do, and you can you can have your coffee as long as you need it. And I stock up on instant coffee. Personally, I have it and I use it if I'm in a rush. I use it. Put a little,
Yeah.
like you said, put a little bit of whiskey in there, and it'll taste just like regular shitty coffee. Yeah, I see this chicory root as a sub for coffee, and you can do that, and it's mediocre. It's not awful, but it's
Right.
not coffee, and
It's not
it's
coffee.
probably about as good as instant coffee is. So both of those are pretty good options.
All right. Now, nobody likes the British and, like you said, confuse people in their tea. But
Hmm.
I have put the wife in charge of figuring out some kind of plants she can be growing that we can make tea and things out of. So far, she hasn't come back with anything that I want to drink every morning. I'm just saying, I'm sticking with the
Well,
coffee
let
for
me
now.
let me give you a heads up. I've been drying all my lemon balm out, hanging it up
Yeah.
and drying it. That's pretty good. It's not tea, but you can mix it in with tea and kind of stretch that tea a little bit further. Now,
Yeah.
tea, if you keep it in a dry, good spot, you got about 2 years for it. It's really not a long
Okay.
term item. You know what I mean? It's something that if you have in your house and the lights go out, that's great. But you have to keep rotating through that tea in the meantime. That's something that you want to keep up on if you're really into tea.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Tea, there's I don't know. There's a million places to start here with this. The I also like um the morning beverage. I actually have a bunch of Black Rifle has those pretty well vacuum packed bags of coffee,
Hmm.
and they sell big, like 5 pound bags. And I threw those in 5 gallon buckets with, some moisture packs and whatever. But again, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to keep. I know my Patriot Supply does sell the bulk freeze dried coffee. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. I do know that you can turn over a lot of stuff like the pancake mix, the rice, the stuff like that, canned meats, that kind of stuff, you can rebuy that like 5 times and not have that 25-year shelf life. You know what I'm saying? For the
Hmm.
same amount of money that you pay for the long-term food. So right now, it's pretty realistic that food prices are going to go up. It's pretty realistic to think, hey, I'm going to probably be able to use some of this stuff. And guess what? I may be able to trade or barter if money's tight with this food, or I just might be able to, help out a friend, right? I might be
Right.
able to say, hey, you came over and did this work for me. How about I give you a 25-pound bag of rice because money's tight? And hey, that helps out. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of thing, or hey, I have an extra 5 pounds of coffee and it expires in the next 3 months. I feel like I don't want to keep it any longer. Let me help you out with that. You have coffee and don't have to spend $50 a month on coffee like I do. And
Hmm.
you can, move on. So these are things you want to be looking at. But there's some other things that are outside the basic food preps, right? So we have rice, we have pancake mix. I buy syrup. Syrup does not last. It lasts like a year and a half, 2 years if you buy that corn syrup bullshit that is not as pretty before it
Right.
starts to get a little funny. Would I still eat it at 3 years if that's all I had? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it
it's
is
something
one
that
of
you
those
want to
things
think
that
about, right?
it'll last a lot longer if you have it sealed up. An open container of maple syrup that's not really maple syrup isn't, it's going to go bad a lot faster. Um,
Right.
but keeping it sealed is a big, and I would say that with most food products, the longer you can keep it sealed up in the original container, the better, unless the original container is not great, like most bags of rice and things like that. You might want to repackage some of that stuff. Same thing with honey. I wouldn't open that up until you're really
No.
getting ready to use it. And it just goes, you just air in your food. That's the main thing.
Right. And once you expose it to bacteria, that kind of stuff, then, that's what you're asking for trouble. But
Hmm.
again, you do what you got to do. So there's a couple of things outside the food that you might want to store in order to prepare for a coming food shortage. And that's kind of a, contradiction, but it makes sense. This is how we prepare. One, you might want to think about getting some cash, silver, gold, coins, that kind of thing. Keep
Right.
it on hand. Cash so that when things start to get ugly, you can go to the store. You can do that kind of thing. Ammo. Um, Ammo, brass, primers, all that stuff has come back down a little bit to reasonable, not cheap, but reasonable prices. Where you might want to think about, doing that right now, you might want to stock up a little bit. If I didn't have my food situation squared away, I probably wouldn't be moving into the ammo situation right now.
Right.
I would focus on food first. But if I'm like, you know what, Chuck, my my food supply is all pretty good. I'm pretty squared away. I really need to know what I should be doing. Well, guess what? One, you should have a couple grand in cash, like 2,000 set aside. Now, if the world you live in that's completely unrealistic, maybe that number is 500 you set aside. And maybe it
Right.
takes you a couple months to get it there. But you just put
Hmm.
aside a little bit every month and, hey, $200 a month until you build up into a reasonable stockpile of money. Having money on hand is nice. Plus, when you see, hey, that four-wheeler is on Facebook yard sale for $1,200 and that's a steal because it's four-wheel drive, you're like, hey, I
Hmm.
have money in the safe. I'll be right over there in 10 minutes.
Right.
See, I'm making your world a better place right now. Um, Another thing you might want to consider stockpiling is gas, kerosene, propane, diesel. Don't let your
Right.
propane tank get empty. Don't, if you have some for the grill or if you use it for your heat, that kind of thing, keep it on the fuller end because prices are only going up. Gas. Now, gas doesn't keep that well. Think about stable, think about rotating it through. Um,
Right.
6 months to a year, if you keep the cans full, where Basically the reason I say keep the cans full is you'll get humidity and condensation will get in there, and
Right.
that moisture will start to mess things up. But if you keep the can full, there's a lot less of that going on. Something to be aware of. But if you're rotating through gas once a year, that's no problem. You don't even really need to worry about stable at that point.
Right.
You
Right.
should, believe it or not, if for storage you want non-ethanol gas, although I've heard mixed reviews on that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the ethanol tends to go bad. I've heard people say the exact opposite. Do your own research. I know I go with non-ethanol if I'm trying to keep it.
Right.
Um, I would say propane, or sorry, diesel. Diesel and kerosene. One, kerosene is super universal. If you can buy it for about the same price as diesel, you may want to go that way.
Right.
What
Right.
happens with kerosene is you don't pay the over the road tax because you're not putting it in a vehicle typically. Um, check your vehicle, see if it's, kerosene is an option for, again, an emergency situation when things aren't available. Maybe that's,
Right.
another way you could go. But kerosene will store longer. But diesel, as long as you don't have it in freezing temperatures where it might gel up, diesel will last a good year and a half. That's something, again, you should be rotating through. I know I keep several cans for my tractor where I basically keep a year's supply of diesel for my tractor and I rotate it
Mm-hmm.
through. And so
Right.
that way it's never more than a year old. I keep it in the barn. It doesn't get that cold in there. That's another thing. Now, another thing you might want to consider would be some storage items, things that you could keep your food and stuff. Find a place that has the cheap 5-gallon buckets and lids and that kind of thing. Buy several. Buy the plastic storage totes that you can cache items. Again, your
Mm-hmm.
budget is going to dictate, what kind of quality and what kind of things you get. But something that's going to keep the mice out of your toilet paper is going to be better than, not spending any money and then coming out and finding all your stuff is useless, or pulling up
Right.
that bag of rice and it falls out and you see mouse poop all in it. That's not the way to go. Kevin, more thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about seed storage. Um,
Yeah.
we get into these headspaces of storing food and storing different things, but we're not planning next year. I know this year I had an issue. I wasn't able to grow any spinach this year because I couldn't find any spinach seeds anywhere, which is
Right.
ridiculous. I can find them now, and so I bought them, and I have them for next year.
Right.
Um, but a lot of people were gardening this year, and there was kind of a run on seeds when things started coming out. So you
There
you
was.
didn't have every option available that you normally would. So
Right.
seed storage and gardening, those are both big parts of food storage. Um, you know, I know right now I haven't even planted potatoes, but I have potatoes growing in my compost bin. Those are great things because they can stay in the ground. You can dig those up whenever. Same thing with carrots. You can dig that up in the middle of winter, and it'll still be a carrot. Pull it out of there and you know throw it in the soup. You're ready to go, ready to party. A lot of these things are a lot of these things. People talk about foraging. Some really good at that. Really good at spotting and identifying plants and grabbing them, and mushrooms, different things. Great, that's a great skill to have. But growing your own food, will really help you out as far as you being able to pick out what you want to grow and know what it is that's growing there. You know what I mean? A lot of people can walk past a potato plant or a carrot and not even realize what's growing right there.
Yeah.
If you're doing the gardening and you grow these vegetables, you'll start seeing these vegetables growing wild, and you'll get a better idea of what's edible and what's not edible.
Right. No, I like it. Now, if you're enjoying these pro tips that Kevin's got for you, and I have a good one coming up next, but you may want to like
Mm-hmm.
and subscribe if you guys haven't done that. You may want to subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on the podcast or the YouTube channel here. Just saying, that's options you guys might have. So just putting that out there. Y'all might want to do that kind of thing. But anyway, here's a pro tip that you guys have been waiting for. Apocalypse happens, end of the world. You're like, I didn't listen to Kevin and Chuck, and I did not stockpile any seeds. Where am I going to get any? Well, I used to work at the sewer plant with Kevin. And that is a gold mine of seeds. All the time, those tomatoes were just popping up right out of the poos. Pro tip.
They grow in human shit really well.
Human shit. You're like, wait, there were tomatoes there the whole time. And, they come with extra
half tomatoes
flavor.
and half pot plants.
Pot plants? Well, that's where you live.
For you kids that are listening, marijuana used to have seeds in it. It would come with seeds in the bag.
Back in the day.
And people would flush those down the toilet.
Right,
all you kids with your brownies and your fancy shit today,
Yeah, they're killing me, right? Just saying, putting that out there. So that's the pro tip. Check out your local sewer plant if you guys need seeds. What else? So what other kind of food would you be storing, Kevin? Is there any other that you really like? I mean, I know we saw a big shortage on bread. So flour doesn't keep that well. Again, that's where your Mylar bags come into play. Again, the freezing kind of helps with getting rid of any bugs. Mylar bags, then 5-gallon buckets. Flour is a tough one to store. Sugar and salt, tough ones to store. Especially salt always comes in those freaking cardboard boxes. And if there's any kind of humidity or anything like that, it just freaking turns into a mess. So if you can find salt in a great storage container, even better. I mean, obviously we see the small plastic containers. Those are great, but it gets expensive to buy it that way. They do sell big plastic bags of salt, but bottom line, look around. If you do have a place that you do like curing meat and that kind of thing, there are places that sell the big bulk bags and they're intended to be stored of salt. You might do well with that. Again, if you're willing to pay more money, depends, what your world's made of, but they sell sugar in these plastic containers that you can do. And that's great, but you pay like 3 times as much. So if you come up with your own plastic containers, I mean, honestly, if you cleaned and dried, you could do gallon milk jugs and fill them with sugar out of a paper bag and store those. You would be a world better than, somebody else who didn't store any. Because sugar, flour, that kind of stuff is going to be awesome in the end of the world. You might want to work that out with your flour. I don't know. You'd have to have it like really clean and it sounds tough, but look into that. I would also say yeast. Yeast was a big thing when COVID hit, when nobody was able to get bread. That was a huge thing and it just wasn't available anywhere. That's something you want to set aside and store. And Kevin will mention, he carries some yeast in his armpit all the time because, you keep it warm, you keep it growing. I guess what you learned that at some kind of like Renaissance fair or something. You found out that's what they used to do in yesteryear. It turned out the baker would go from town to town and keep the yeast in his armpit. And that was, another secret of the pros. So I'm just saying you got to keep your options open. I would also say that I would look into animals. Animals are another great option for the, inflation, right? So if I have chickens throwing out eggs, now again, you kind of got a free range because these chickens are not that cheap to feed, right? Feed is expensive and it can kick your ass. So you got to pay attention to what you're doing. But if you can, like my wife loves to throw out lots of feed. We have fat chickens and they're just like living the life of Riley, right? But in a perfect world, you should have scrawny chickens that are just laying eggs every day. And they should be eating the bugs and the ticks
Right.
and the everything else instead of the nice corn and shit you feed them. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think a, a big step, a pro tip for anybody that's got space. Chickens are really easy to take care of, especially if they're free range and you don't mind, a fox snatching one or two every once in a while. It happens. If you're gonna free range, there's that stuff outside that loves to eat chickens. But the amount of eggs that I have, I'm getting eggs every week, and it's only me and my wife. You know what I mean? There's no way I can eat all these eggs, and you know, it's great right now. I can just give them to neighbors. Everybody loves getting free eggs, but when the time comes and all I've got is eggs, it's a lot better to have a couple of eggs.
Yeah.
Goats are another one. I have never raised a goat. I've had goats I lived on a farm with goats that somebody care of. They're great animals. They eat, they're smart like dogs. They're fun animals to have around, and they produce a lot of milk. And goat meat is really, it's one of my favorite types.
Goat meat
of meat.
is
And,
really
just
good.
keep that in.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a way to go there. Um, yeah, rabbits. You guys know I'm always pushing rabbits. Kevin threw a little tribute in his name there.
Yeah,
but
one thing I gotta put out here, because I'm just fucking sick of it. Every fucking time somebody mentions rabbits, everybody starts talking about rabbit starvation. Oh, rabbit starvation! You gotta watch out for rabbit starvation. You know what else causes you to starve? Not having any rabbits at all. Rabbit starvation comes when you're not the appropriate amounts of fat and oils. You can do that with a million other things and still get a belly full of protein. Rabbits are a great survival food, and everyone acts like it's like you're gonna die if you eat rabbits. It's not the case. Rabbits are fine. A lot of meat. They produce. They're just having babies nonstop. Always
right.
And what I mean, they reproduce like money. They're just great for that sort of stuff. And
like rabbits.
And yes, it's true that if you don't eat anything except for rabbits for months, you can still starve to death. But
that is true.
You're not going to find yourself in many situations where the only food you have is rabbit for months on end.
Yeah, but here's the deal: you have the option of no rabbits and no other food, or rabbits and no other food. I like the rabbit option.
Right.
I think that actually came from. I actually saw it back when it happened. I want to say the first time that kind of became a big push, it was like Bear Grylls or that Survivor Man show. One of those way back. He was out there and he's like, well, you can't just eat rabbit. And actually, he didn't even say that. He was like, look, if you eat just rabbit meat, you're going to die. You're going to still starve to death because you're not getting the fat. So I recommend eating the eyeballs and some of the other organs because that'll give you the fat. And then it works out. But everyone's like, oh, nope, I heard him say it. And I mean, he drinks his own pee. So we're good, right?
He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing. And I say, does he know what he's doing? I like that chubby guy. Who's that old man who had a show just like that? Is that Survivor Man or one of them? There was another guy who's like,
I don't remember.
He's not drinking his own pee. There was another guy at the same time. I don't know. And he was just like, yeah, I get some of this. I get some of that. But the bottom line is rabbits reproduce like crazy and they're a great added meat supply. Guess what? Turns out if you stockpile some like chicken bouillon and some rice and you had some rabbits, guess what? You'd be living pretty fucking good. That's what I'm saying.
Living large.
Mm-hmm. Things would be a lot better, right? Than if you didn't have rice, rabbit meat. And guess what you could trade for all kinds of good stuff? Rabbit meat. Turns out people would be into that. I'm just saying, cheap, easy to raise, easy to deal with. Rabbits are awesome. And my wife is ecstatic about rabbit poop. She's like, oh, I can compost that. That's going to be great. Use it in the garden, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. You got to realize that, this stuff has, if you use the whole animal plus the furs, if you figure out what you're doing there, turns out you can do a lot of cool things, right? You can use every part of the animal. Turns out it's great for the planet instead of all this bullshit that everybody's like, oh, if we eat meat, it's going to be the end of the world. Well, maybe that's ridiculous. All right. That's all I can tell you. A couple of notes. I said OPEC was going to cut back 200 million barrels a day. It's 2 million barrels a day, which is still
Okay.
2% of the world's oil supply. I just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put out false information. I kind of already did, but now I'm making the correction so y'all can
All right.
stay calm. Africa was having a big drought. A lot of people, climate change. Turns out, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you've heard about companies can't find good employees. Now, I also want to point out companies aren't paying relative to inflation. And that's why they can't find good employees because everyone's like,
Right.
yeah, I can just not work and be just as good. So something to think about. But there is a lot of things going on in the world that are going to drive prices up and cut food production down. And I'm just saying it's coming back. I started to mention in the beginning of the episode, we have the national debt is insane, right? We're over $30 trillion. And basically, the production of goods, we're not keeping up. Now, what's ironic is the Federal Reserve is keeping the interest rate at 5% or around there. The bottom line, that's actually not even where it should be. We're so upside down with inflation that we really need to raise it even higher to kind of bring things back into check and reality.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that because we'd all freak out. Well, but the problem is they're basically protecting themselves. And here's the bigger secret that nobody wants you to know is if the interest rate goes up even higher, we can't afford our debt. Right now, they're loaning themselves money based on nothing at a 1% interest rate. If it just went up to 2%, we couldn't afford to pay it. That's
Mm-hmm.
how insane that is. So they're trying to keep interest rates down to keep the illusion going. And I'm just saying, inflation is coming and you guys need to prepare. You need to have your things in order. And the best way to have things in order, we can only get so much money, right? We can only bring in so much. But what you can do is you can find ways to take care of yourself. You can find ways to raise your own stuff, to be, that's what we're always trying to do is become more self-sufficient. And that's what it comes down to is, can I take care of myself? And guess what? When you can take care of yourself, you don't need the government. And that's really what it comes down to, is to get to a point where we don't need the government. Now,
Right.
obviously, they can go out and we can have policemen and that'll be great, but you get the idea. Now, if you enjoyed this, do us a favor, like, subscribe to the podcast again. I would, and to the YouTube comments, we love to hear them. They also actually help spread the word because
Mm-hmm.
it ends up growing the credibility. So if you have something to say, definitely, feel free to reach out. You can email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. We do respond to emails. You also may want to check out our website. It's preppingbadass.com. And there we have a link to the podcast. We also have some badass gear. We have some cool shirts. We have some cool things that you could be wearing, help support the brand, help build the popularity. We have an email list you can sign up. Turns out Facebook, YouTube, they don't like guys who talk about guns. They don't like guys who kind of are anti-government. They're always kind of, especially Facebook, is always kind of put the hammer down and be like, oh, you guys are just spreading fear. And, they're trying to shut us down. So if you want to stay connected, you probably want to get on the email list and sign up over there. Otherwise, I would say,
Oh, I
what?
got
Go
one
out.
more thing before we wrap
Go ahead.
up.
Yeah.
Talking about food and food storage and stuff, I just wanted to talk real quick about one of my favorite recipes.
Cool.
We got different stuff in here, so listen up. You can try this weekend. So you're gonna want to start with 4 chicken thighs, right? And you're gonna marinate it. You're gonna marinate it for about a half hour with NyQuil. You're gonna want to get the cherry flavored NyQuil.
Cherry.
And then you put it in a cooking dish, 50, for 3 minutes with aluminum foil over the top. You're gonna wait until that NyQuil gets like real thick, real thick and syrupy. And then you take it out. Everybody gets 1 chicken breast. If you get a little bit sleepy, that's normal. It's got the chicken has that stuff that turkey has in it. That's probably where it's coming from. But I like to add a little bit of clove in there. It gives it a nice flavor. Cooking pro tip from me. That's all I got for the day.
All right. So with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Yeah. And